And moving right along, I'd like to introduce our keynote speaker. He's an SMA associate and a friend, Scott Keeney. So please let's welcome Scott to help him get energized to share his experiences at VFC.
Great.
Scott, over to you.
Welcome, Scott.
Thanks, Jacques. Thanks, AJ. Appreciate you asking me to come and share my experiences with VF. It's been a really exciting engagement. Got exposure to a lot of different groups, so it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm glad. Yeah, it's definitely been an interesting engagement for us.
Okay, so some topics I'm going to go over. New challenges in the retail space, how we're understanding consumer behavior, and how we're leveraging consumer data, e-commerce, and the new e-commerce platform that VF has undertaken, and then the enablement and support functions to help drive all this. Okay, so I think this is probably something we can all relate to. With COVID-19, there's been a lot of new changes, challenges that are entering the retail space.
Hey, Scott, can I interrupt for a second? Can you please? Not everyone actually understands who VF Corp is. Can you please talk about the brands that they have?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Sorry. Should have started with that. Yeah. So VF owns a lot of major brands that we probably shop. Vans is their biggest brand. The North Face, Timberland. They acquired Supreme. I'm not sure if how many people know about Supreme, but I know it's quite popular with the younger generations now. Curious how they're going to incorporate that brand into their portfolio. Given for those who aren't aware, Supreme is more of like a drop brand where they'll tweet out a location. They'll have exclusive shirts or whatever in limited quantities, and people kind of rush over there to get them, and then they can resell them for 2-3 times the price that they bought them for. So it's a really interesting business model.
Early days of Vans, it was like that.
Yeah. So really curious how VF is going to incorporate that brand in their portfolio. Dickies is another large brand they have.
Mm-hmm.
And then they have some other workwear brands, maybe lesser known brands. Icebreaker is a big one out of New Zealand. I think that covers the major ones. So yeah, VF is kind of a conglomerate that owns all these brands and is working all the time to keep the brands on the same page, let them have their own brand identity while still fitting into the overall corporation. Does that help, AJ?
Thank you. Excellent.
Yeah,
thanks.
Sorry. Okay, so we'll get back into the challenges. Consumer behavior is obviously changing, not only as a result of COVID, but in the more digital marketplace that we're finding ourselves in. And then how do we leverage consumer data that we can glean into a better understanding of our consumers? Disappearance of major channels like Sears, those types of channels are disappearing, and we're getting more digital titans like Amazon, Walmart, those types of things. Changes in supply chain operations, and then VF has really embraced an agile working strategy. All right, so digital shopping, in terms of consumer behavior, we've seen a decade in days is what a lot of people are saying. As a result of COVID-19, people just, we were all kind of locked down, we couldn't leave. So we really focused on digital shopping and really embraced digital shopping almost as a necessity. Brand loyalty, obviously now, with Amazon reviews, consumers have more options than ever, and building that goodwill with consumers is huge to maintaining that brand loyalty. And not only that, you kind of have to connect with them almost on a cultural or value-driven level. You see a lot of huge values coming out of companies like Vans, promoting social. Different types of social initiatives, trying to really connect with their consumers. And then convenience, obviously, with Amazon doing 2-day deliveries and the disappearance of those kind of wholesale channels, these retail brands are forced to revitalize, redevelop their supply chain to compete with that sort of thing. and offer different luxuries like curbside pickup or buy online, ship to store. Those things that we really saw heavy involvement coming out of the pandemic. Okay. And then that leads to consumer data. So one thing VF has really put an emphasis on in the last year or so is data and analytics. There's a lot of sources we can gather data from, online, mobile, in-store, social media, customer service. Those are all valuable sources of customer data, and collecting all that into a data lake. One thing that we had to watch out for a lot was regional privacy issues. California obviously has CCPA, and then Europe has a similar legal practice in place called GDPR. So that really complicates things when we look at consumer data. We almost have to set the CCPA level as the baseline to make sure we're compliant with that state, and all the challenges and differences that creates in gathering and disclosing what data we're collecting and how we're using that data to consumers. And then how do we analyze that data? So we get it all into a data lake. There's several different paths that VF is taking, or at least exploring, on how to make that data available. One path is mastering data. So you're taking certain data and you're almost putting a code behind it, and calling it a master data. And then other data is just informal, kind of loose data. But the idea behind master data management is, this is a uniform section of data that everyone can understand throughout the company. It all has a code to it, or a decoder ring to it, so everyone understands what you're looking at. You only get certain subsections of data, just to streamline the process and make things easier for everyone. And then data as a service would be almost like a portal where anyone in the company could go pull data from this portal, and define the query and what kind of data they want to see. And this will become really useful for the data and analytics team. And then ultimately, how do they use that data? We want it to become actionable data that we can use to understand our customers, and ultimately reach more customers and convert more sales. And then Ecom 1.5 is kind of where I've been living for the past 6 months or so. The idea here is to give a more scalable ecom platform, but also maintain each brand's identity. So obviously Vans and TNF have, the North Face have very different brand identities and are reaching different customers. So we want to be on the same platform and make that scalable, but also allow them to put their own unique spin on the site, while maintaining a uniform and scalable backend. Like I mentioned, we want data analytic capabilities present there. Obviously, it has to be an enjoyable user experience from start to finish. You don't want to, clunky buttons or things that don't make sense, or error pages, all that. We need to be able to interact with consumers in new ways, seemingly all the time. Things like Google Voice and Alexa are some of the things that VF is looking at right now, incorporating into their ecom site. You need the architecture to support the platform. So a lot goes into that on the back end, just making sure we have all the technical pieces in place to support a new ecom platform. And then connectivity with the order management systems, and then ultimately the back end ERP systems. VF uses SAP. They just went through a ERP implementation this April. So that was one of the things I was working on, was coordinating the go live of that ERP system along with the Ecom 1.5 Vans Canada go live, which happened to slide right into the ERP implementation. So it became quite a challenge, and it looks like the same thing is going to happen with the North Face go live. So that'll be exciting. Okay, so the timeline that we have, like I said, Vans Canada, Ecom 1.5 went live in May of this year. It's currently in stabilization. And then I'm the project delivery manager for the TNF North America Ecom 1.5 go live. We're expecting that to go live in the February or March timeframe next year. And then in parallel, we're also working the Vans US Ecom 1.5 go live, which is also kind of in that Q1 2020 range. So it presents a lot of challenges. Obviously working on two of the biggest brands in the company at the same time. There's a lot of dependencies that we have to track between one another. So I work very closely with the Vans delivery manager and the program team to keep all those dependencies in front of us, and making sure that nothing's slipping through the cracks. And one interesting thing to note is the way that VF has gone about this implementation is using something they call white label. So they built all the features that you see on the site in this white label systematic way. It's all the same, but each e-com platform for each brand can put their own kind of unique content spin on it. So the idea was to make it a very systematic, very similar code structure, while just allowing each brand to be able to put their spin on it. But that is presenting a lot of challenges if the team that's developing that feature is behind or not delivering when the other brand needs it. That presents a lot of challenges. So it's something that we're working through. We've also had a lot of issues with vendor / implementation partners. On the Vans Canada side, they used a company called Astound as their implementation partner, and it was not well received. The VF was not happy with their performance. A lot of issues, a lot of delays. And so for the North Face, they chose to go with a different partner called EPAM. And that in itself presented a lot of challenges because we started the North Face project with EPAM knowing about Astound, but Astound could not know about EPAM due to contract negotiations. So there was no knowledge transfer. We were starting, basically from scratch with EPAM with no knowledge transfer. So that presented a lot more challenges, and we're still kind of working through all those issues. And if I had to be candid, I'd say that EPAM isn't really living up to their expectations either. So they've already changed leadership once on the project due to lack of performance. So more issues that we're working through. Agile versus waterfall is an interesting comparison that we've come across. Like I said, VF has really embraced Agile, especially for the ecom project. However, partway through, when things weren't quite getting delivered the way they wanted to, especially with EPAM as our implementation partner, they've almost kind of done a 180 and gone more to a waterfall approach, which is what the ERP system implementation used. And that seems to be working a lot better. So just a kind of an interesting thing that I've noticed or seen is that maybe Agile isn't always doesn't always lend itself to large project implementations, or needs to be executed in the right way. And then I mentioned the proximity to the ERP implementation release windows. That's another issue. And then brand involvement. Obviously, you walk a fine line of wanting to keep the brand involved, do the user acceptance testing with them to make sure they're in agreement with the changes that are happening. They can use the system and the site when we get to go live, but not having them dictate the pace and the plan to completing the project. So that's been a struggle to kind of find that line where we're keeping them involved at the right amount, but not letting them dictate that plan. And then enablement, obviously I mentioned the back-end systems, supply chain, the ERP system with SAP. That project is called Polaris at VF, and they're working a lot on automating fulfillment processes. They're looking into new systems, robotics for pick, pack, and ship in the distribution centers. VF has invested a lot in new distribution centers and larger distribution centers. As I mentioned, the loss of those wholesale distributors has led to these retail companies having to really rely on themselves for fulfillment and quick fulfillment. So VF has really put a lot of investment there. And then I mentioned the modern modular backend system, SAP. and the cloud services attached to it. It's another piece. It's all got to connect from the e-com through the order management to the back end system, and then all the way back. So if you imagine, being on the VAM's website and placing an order, that all goes through each of those systems and then back to you to tell you that your order is confirmed with the right confirmation number, and it tells the distribution center what to pick, pack, and ship. All that process. And then I mentioned the architecture that is in place to support all that. So a lot going on. A lot of fun stuff. It's neat to be working in an engagement at a client where you can touch and feel the product. You just go onto the website, and you can almost do QA in real time on the website. In fact, that's what we were doing when the Vans Canada went live. We had 24-hour, 24/7. We were all on shifts for 8 hours a day. So I'd be on the Vans Canada site at 11 at night, just kind of clicking through things and seeing if I got an error page or those types of things, and raising it up to the team if we had it. So interesting stuff. But anyway, hope that gives you kind of a flavor of the engagement at VF and all the different things I've been exposed to. Obviously, it's been a wild ride, but it's been fun.
Well, thank you, Scott, and I appreciate you helping the Vans and the other brands stay on brand at VF. It's incredible, what the transformation that's happening in these firms, and the amount of it's almost like you think about Coca-Cola became a marketing company, and now all these retailers are becoming digital storefronts, and there's huge amounts of data development, software development going on in these firms.
Yeah, and this is a growing part of our business in terms of what we're doing here. Journey actually was an interesting journey. It started about 3.5 years ago. Right. And we actually started by helping them set the agenda and the mandate for digital transformation. That's right. At the entire VF Corporation. And that then eventually evolved into the implementation phase that Scott's been leading. So it's been a really interesting, exciting project for us. We've learned a lot from it. Scott, you've obviously have had an incredible experience working there at VF, and this is a part of our business which we hope to grow.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was on the phone with another one of our colleagues yesterday, Shane Thompson, and he's doing some work at Parker on very similar types of things. Same challenges, rolling out big data, big software components, and it's interesting.
Yeah. Now, Scott, you got a chance to really. You mentioned it's kind of different working at a company where you can actually touch and feel the product, go to the mall and actually see the product, right?
Yep.
It is. This has been a fabulous expansion for us in terms of the client.
And it's complicated because it's global, right? I mean, they are literally have presence around the world.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Scott. That was fascinating. We'll ask you to come back again, particularly not when you're like super busy, probably working 24 hours a day as you get closer to all of the implementations in the first quarter of next year. But perhaps when you get a breather, we'd love to hear again from you.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks for the opportunity to speak, and thanks for the opportunity for the engagement.
Great, thanks.